Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for this hop contracting webinar with Yakima Chief Hops. My name is Zoltan, and I'm the Director of Key Accounts for Europe, being joined by two of my dear colleagues, Katie and Jason. Katie is the Regional Sales Manager for the south of the UK, as well as Scandinavia. And Jason is the Regional Sales Manager for North UK and Ireland. We're going to kick off by a really brief introduction about YCH and our ownership group, followed by a description of the supply chain cycle between the farm and the brewer and how Yakima Chief fits into the middle of that. And then Jason's going to talk you through about the kind of history of hop contracting and its importance and the benefits to the brewer and to the grower. And then we're going to go into some suggestions and recommendations how to go about that, and yeah, hopefully you'll find this valuable. So Katie, who is Yakima Chief?
Oh, thanks, Zoltan. Yeah, so I'm just going to kick off with a brief overview of who we are as an organization. So we are Yakima Chief Hops, and our mission is quite simply to connect family hop farms to the world's finest brewers, and our focus is to provide all of you guys with the best quality hops. So we are a 100% grower-owned hop company. We're owned by 15 grower families who you can see pictured here on the right of this slide, and who are fundamentally responsible for growing the majority of our acreage. We also, on top of that, work with over 50 other family growers across the Pacific Northwest, who we are also working super closely with to bring you superior quality hops. So I'll pass it to Zoltan now to get going.
Thanks, Katie. So this chart really tries to describe that supply chain that I've mentioned between the farm and the brewery. So if we start off in the kind of bottom left corner, it's the farmers who plan to grow and harvest the hops. Then Yakima Chief receives, produces into pellets or whole cone. We package the hops and we store them. Then they are shipped over to our European warehouse, and then it reaches the breweries over here in Europe. With that, or during that process, we're able to provide the brewers with harvest data, but also quite in-depth analysis and specification in terms of for each batch in terms of alpha, beta, oils, things like that, and as well as full traceability back to the farm should you require that for your quality programs. The brewery then gives us feedback on what they thought. It's usually quite positive, thank you, and very importantly, your forecasts for the next year and beyond. And based on those forecasts, we're able to provide quotes and contract offers. And these are really important for our planning and procurement, because those are used as a basis to our farmers, so they can make reinvestments based on those brewer needs into their fields. Jason, what are the origins of hop contracting?
Thanks, Zoltan. Yeah, so just to look at the origins of hop contracting and give a bit of context to our talk today. So for many years, hops existed in a commodity market. They were traded at low margins for use by quite a small number of large breweries. And this really contributed towards quite a volatile market. We would see a boom-bust cycle, both for the supply and availability of varieties, and also with pricing as well. And of course, this kind of market really just put strain on both the brewers and the growers, and didn't really serve anyone in that supply chain. Of course, back then there were fewer varieties generally, so there was kind of less need for that kind of predictability and less need for that forward planning. And with that, you'd see low innovation overall. It really was, you'd have your kind of typical alpha and aroma varieties. It would be the German and US crops that would provide the majority of those yields. And really, without a proper contracting structure in place globally, they weren't able to have that focus on quality, and it really just worked in a commodity-driven market. with that, thankfully, we can say we saw the birth and emergence of craft beer. And as craft beer industry blossomed, so did the demand for new and a more diverse range of varieties. So farmers could start growing, a far wider range of varieties. The pros of that, of course, would be aroma varieties would demand a higher price per acre. Generally, it shifted that focus towards a more quality-driven market. There was a larger customer base to work with, so more relationships and partnerships for growers and brewers to build. The cons, of course, would be shifting across from the typical alpha varieties towards aroma varieties. They had to consider that typically aroma varieties would yield less bales per acre. With this increased diversity and increased number of varieties to work with, it became more difficult to manage and predict. And of course, shifting acreage across between varieties is a very expensive exercise. On the right there is quite a really interesting picture there, a table of contents from a Hop Union catalogue from June 6, 1995. So you can see there just how far we've come with that. Very much just a one page of varieties for aroma and dual purpose. Even just a small handful of US aroma varieties there. So even in that small time frame from the mid 90s to where we are today, we can see how contracts have really helped push the aroma market forward. As we say, with contracts coming into the market, growing hops is a very expensive crop, especially compared to other crops alternatives that growers could consider. At $14,000 plus per acre, or in euros, 30,000 euros per hectare, growers really needed that assurance and that confidence that their investments would be met with a workable return. So as craft brewers started to contract, it really helped drive the aroma market forward. And it meant that growers could have confidence in installing new acreage on new varieties, in investing in new facilities, and really investing in the people and the practices on a farm level. It also helped shift the focus in the breeding programs, especially over here in America. This proper contracting structure that started really helped make breeding for aroma varieties a viable thing. We no longer we could focus on just producing alpha content, and obviously focusing on disease resistant and strong agronomics. All these things are incredibly important, but it meant we could really dial in and start to find and discover new and unique aromas, which really helped drive the industry forward. The next slide just kind of gives a visual idea of that, what we've just spoken about. The left side, you can see there from the 80s through to the noughties, where through this time, 80% plus of hops were uncontracted. And on the right-hand side there, you can see it was a shift towards contracted coming into play, with 80% plus of hops being contracted. Many of us will remember 2007 to 2008, where there was a global hop crisis. There was really it really highlighted how important hop contracts were going to be going forward. Where there was a real misalignment with supply and demand at this point, compounded by a poor harvest year, and things like warehouse fires, which these kind of things can happen at any given year. It really just highlighted how important contracts were going to be going forward for the whole supply chain. Following on from that, there was some reactionary contracting in the years following, and a very fast growth in the craft beer market. Actually saw a hop surplus during kind of 2015 to 2016. So really looking ahead, our long-term goal collectively as a supply chain is really to focus on balance and really focus on sustainable hop contracting that is going to create value for everyone within that footprint. Sustainable contracting practices are going to provide solutions for everyone in the supply chain and really bridge and connect the entire supply chain together. I think that is really the long-term goal for everyone here, is sustainable hop contracting to be the goal.
Okie dokie. So, well, why contract? I guess let's get to the crux of it. There are now a record number of breweries, with over 10,000 breweries across Europe, plus many, many more globally. With that, there's also now a record number of varieties available in the market. If we take a look at 2008, there were around 90 varieties specifically used in the US craft beer market, by comparison to 2018, where there was 154 varieties. So essentially that's a huge range, and a large demand to maintain and manage. So naturally, being able to provide our growers with a forward insight through contracting, this really is key in giving our growers confidence in the acreage demands, and ultimately gives you, our partners, confidence in your demands. So leading on from this, as we all know, the hop market is inherently challenging, with hops being an agricultural product. With just one harvest a year, there is some level of unpredictability, whether that be yield fluctuations or the weather. So we need to maintain balance as best we can, and ultimately avoid that blue line, which you can see on the graph on the right. Hops are a complex crop, and they do need a high level of expertise to store them correctly and process them correctly, and ensure they reach you guys at their highest level of quality for use in your beer. And this comes at a high cost of production to ensure we have state-of-the-art facilities. So based on these factors, contracts essentially help mitigate those boom-bust cycles and present more stability in the market, ultimately allowing us to achieve that orange line on the right-hand side in the graph, long-term stability for brewers and growers. Ultimately, we're able to lock in stable supply and pricing for brewers, and this ensures a fair return to our growers and as much value to the farm as possible, which we'll go on to explain in a little bit. Finally, it allows our growers to make predictable and appropriate acreage decisions, mitigating the risk, and supply varieties that you want each year, and that are essentially integral to your brands.
Thanks, Katie. So asking the question, so why should the brewer care when we talk about contracting like this? So we're going to take a quote here from Jason Perrault. Jason from Perrault Farms, who are one of our founding grower owners at YCH. He's also the CEO of Yakima Chief Ranches, and they look after managing the Footprints program, the Green Chief program, two fantastic programs which help ensure varietal purity and the best growing practices on a farm level. Two fantastic programs made viable because of good contracting, and also the breeding program as well. So they look after the breeding arm of the company. So this is a quote from Jason. For us, this is about generations down the road, not years. We have literally bet the farm on our relationships with brewers, with a substantial long-term debt incurred to reinvest. But the stability that YCH, YCR, and breweries bring gives us the confidence to make that bet. So I think this really highlights how important and influential the bonds between growers and brewers has become, especially in recent years. It really is essential for the long-term stability and vitality of the whole industry. Just to touch on return to grower, something we're really proud of and really proud to report back to you guys. So return to grower basically means for every dollar per kilo of hops sold, 78% of the sales revenue goes back to the growers. This not only includes our grower owners, but also all of the allied growers that we work with in the Pacific Northwest. So that's a really awesome thing there that we're really proud of. 78% of the sales revenue going back to the growers, which is significantly higher than the industry standard. It's these strong and sustainable returns that allow the growers to make these really key investments in their facilities, in the people working there, in the farming practices, and all these factors is why we see these world-class hops that are available today. As an example of what these investments look like, just in the last 6 years, just a snapshot of some of the key investments. We've seen 33 new picking machines, 22 new kilns, 24 new baling rooms, and of course fair wages for labour as well across all of our growers and allied growers. So it's something to be really proud of. And I think as a brewer, when you purchase through Yakima Chief Hops, you can have full confidence that the revenue generated is going back towards investments into the farms, and that really drives the hop quality that you receive in your brewery. Superior hop quality, of course, means great beer for us all to enjoy. So ultimately, just to kind of highlight that idea, sustainable grower returns means reinvestments in quality. Proper contracting structures like this and good contracting practices allow for long-term farm investments. And again, when we talk about creating value, really the breeding program is a great example of that. As we've been able to focus on unique aroma varieties and find new unique flavors and aromas for brewers to use. In that time frame that we've spoken about, as contracts have come into play, it's really made that viable, and we've seen varieties like Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe come through. Really, the kinds of innovation that maybe wouldn't have been possible without contracting structures in place. And even recently, with the release of Talus this year, and Sabro before that, Parto, Laurel, it really does highlight the kind of value that these sustainable returns has provided.
Thanks, Jason. So by now, probably you guys are wondering how should you contract, and our recommendations will follow. This is basically based on some key dates that we have to follow, mostly due to nature, and when harvest takes place, which is always in September. So if we start off just focusing on November in the bottom left corner here, this is where hop farmers start planning what they're gonna do in the next calendar year and for the next harvest. And we've mentioned Brow here, for example, that used to be kind of the typical time to discuss hop contracts, but not what brewers will receive in January, February, a couple of months later, but what they will receive 15 months after that. So basically, as I said, planning starts in November. But hop farmers will finalize their acreage by the end of January. And then as soon as the snow has melted in Yakima, field works start in March, and then harvest is in September. On the European brewer side, those hops that have been harvested in September, we're generally able to have those in Europe in January the year after, so probably 4 or 5 months later, ready to be called off. Well, we ask brewers to collect those in October, so by October 31st, which is roughly a 10-11 month cycle, so we can have the warehouse space to receive in the new crop after that, but also to provide return to our hop farmers in the fourth quarter of the year. So here I'll try to kind of demonstrate that with a little bit more specific examples. So currently we're in September 2020. In January 2021, we'll have the 20 crop hops available for deliveries. By the end of January 2021, we would ask you to finalize your hop contracts for the 21 crop, which will be available in January 2022. So in essence, brewers are contracting 12, 13 months in advance of when they'll be able to order those hops. Now, based on those numbers, the farmers will start, the work will start in the field in March 2021 for that crop 21. And in September, that 21 crop is harvested. Now, in October 31st, 2021, this is the collection deadline for the previous crop year, which it will be crop 20. And then again, start January, the crop 21 hops will become available. and we'll kindly need your final numbers for crop 22 in January 31st, 2022, which will become available in January 23. So hopefully that's a logical cycle. In terms of what and how much, we would recommend a 3-year kind of step model, kind of a step down model, as demonstrated here on this slide. So basically, come January 31st, 2021, which we're about 4.5 months away, we would ask you to contract, or would really recommend that you contracted 100% of your anticipated needs from crop 21, which will become available in January 2022. So again, you would contract that 12, 13 months in advance of when it becomes available. At the same time, we would recommend that you contract 75% of that from crop 22 and 50% of that from crop 23. With this step-down approach, it's not like there's a cliff edge, that there's absolutely nothing in the future. You'll close the business, you'll stop brewing. That's unlikely to be the case. So it really helps for our farmers to have at least some visibility down the line. But the reason why we have this step-down approach and leaving some head space is really flexibility for the brewer to increase up what they need or not if they don't. Also, you might see, some of your beer brands change in the market and their sales. That will have an impact on, what exact hop ingredients you will need per brand. So this gives us an opportunity to rebalance some varieties on your contract as the sales of your brands move. In case of very long-standing, breweries with very stable brands, flagship brands that are around, it's very common to have a 5-year contract or even longer, because they just know for sure that security and providing price stability or stability of availability is pretty valuable. So this is just a guide. A lot of the customers I'm working with, I would maybe recommend an 80% and 60, but this is just to give you a guide of what you should be thinking about. And on the second slide, I'm just expanding on this idea that basically the blue bars here are the previous ones. But as soon as we'll get to January 31st, 2022, which is almost 1.5 years from now, then if your crop 22 was 75%, we'll increase it up to 100. If your crop 23 was 50%, we increase it up to 75. And then we introduce a new crop 24, which is the orange bar there, at 50%. So basically, as we move on, as we rebalance every January, we just add on that 25% on the other years, and we maintain that step down. We're just topping it up and then create a new year. So yeah, hopefully this is clear. Any other tips from you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Zoltan. I think that's a really fantastic idea and a fantastic model to work with going forward when you're thinking about your contracts. Really, like you said, provides great value for everyone and space and room to rebalance and adjust longer term. So I think it's a fantastic recommendation there. Yeah, just some other tips to take away here. But the big one is obviously talk to your supplier often and regularly. We're absolutely delighted to hear from you guys and chat with you guys as regularly as possible, really. And we talk about our customers as brewing partners, and we mean partnership in every sense of the word. We want to help as much as we can, and please feel comfortable to pick up that phone as regularly as required, really. We're happy to help with planning for contracting. Suppliers, they have fluid inventories. They often can help more often than anticipated. So please, give us a call if you've got any questions at all. This is a really good one. Checking the pulse of the contract at least once a quarter, and that can help really, maintain the health of your contracts and make sure everything's balanced and on schedule. If it's not something you already do, I'd really highly recommend checking in at least once a quarter. You can speak to us for a contract balance report, just to see where you're at, how much you've used so far, what's left to take within that time frame before the collection deadline. it's a fantastic way to just maintain and look after your hop contracts, to check in once a quarter. Again, we're happy to advise on any of your specific requirements or circumstances. We've got plenty of experience in the team with different circumstances, different sizes of brewery, different levels of growth, whatever it might be. We've got experience, and we're really happy to help with forward planning if it's something that something you'd like help with. And this, just to kind of think about the brewing calendar really, and working in these dates into the brewing calendar and keeping it fresh in your mind. It's not a case of, once the contracts are set and confirmed, not to forget about it and they won't kind of look after themselves. It really pays to check in often, whatever the circumstance might be. If you're looking ahead with strong plans for growth for the following year, obviously a lot of variables in between that time. Make sure your key requirements, your definite numbers are secured, and then as that growth kind of naturally progresses and your production increases, check in often with us, and we can help with those top-ups that might be required as that growth builds. If you're in a stable position, that's fantastic, and taking on all these points and really dialing in on your contract practicing, that's fantastic. It's still worth checking in and looking at those cycles, those 3-year cycles, and keeping those winter months in mind. That's really a key point in the year to be reviewing your existing contracts and forward contracts and just see, do I need to top up? What adjustments may be required? Do I need to rebalance? So yeah, even if you're in a balanced position, keep checking those contracts and checking in with us. If there's an occasion where you may be heavy on the contracts on a particular varieties, again, the earlier we know about that, it's best to acknowledge that as early as possible. So as soon as that becomes apparent, check in with your suppliers, and the earlier we know them, we can look at options and discuss potential solutions going forward. So really, a huge tip really is to give us a call and check in with us. We're always happy to help.
And feel free to reach out even in December, because if our entire European base will all come in January, then we might have a lot to process. But so yeah, it's important to stay in touch during the year. Kitty, what would be the key takeaways?
Yeah, so just to round up with some key things to hopefully take away from the presentation that will be useful for the future. Essentially, contracts underpin the market. They're vital for supply and demand for both our brewing partners and our growers. So whilst the spot market is there to enjoy, no contract isn't really a strategy. We also, there are less than 100 growers in the US, and without contracts, they just simply won't exist. The contracts sort of bind that unique connection directly between our growers and you guys, and ultimately make impactful decisions, they help make impactful decisions with the best interest of everyone. Contract itself is something living. Don't just forget about it. Maintain it. Take care of it like you would any piece of equipment in your brewery. And then I guess finally, just bear in mind, so our programs on farm quality and sustainability and brand management, so footprints program or the Green Chief programs, these are all existing as a result of quality contracting practices. And they allow us to bring you the highest quality hops. So get these dates in your calendar, get them in your diaries, get them in your minds, and use them as a guide going forward. Keep those sort of winter months in mind for discussing with any of us or whoever your RSM is. Knowing that January 31st is really the deadline for forward contracting and submitting those requests to your RSM. And then with January through to October being our contracting time frame, with a collection date of October 31st. So yeah, that's really a big message to take away. So just like to say thank you so much for your time from, I guess, myself, Zoltan and Jason. Really hope it's been useful and you've been able to take away some information from this. It's going to be useful for the future. But do, as we said, feel free to to pick up any of these points with us directly at a later date, and we'd be really happy to discuss that.
Thanks, Katie, and thanks for everybody's attention. And we look forward to hearing your future hop contracting needs, and we look forward to working with you. And thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.